All right, beginning of new school year. What I wanted to talk about today was the requirement that is just accepted in our society that parents are responsible for teaching their kids academic concepts at night that they didn't learn during the school day. And this is just a rampant requirement on parents that we don't really call into question, but we absolutely should, because I want you to think about any other situation in which that would be an expectation. Like, for instance, we take our car to a mechanic. The mechanic fails to fix the car and tells us to fix the car ourselves. Would we accept that? No, we would never go back to that mechanic, and we wouldn't fix the car ourselves. We'd find a competent mechanic, right? Or a doctor that says, well, I don't know what's wrong with your kid. I can't fix it. You're going to have to go home and figure out some home remedies. Would we go back to that pediatrician? I seriously doubt it. Yet every single day, kids come home from school. They fail to learn anything in the classroom. Then parents, after a crazy day themselves, working, managing the household, all the responsibilities parents have, suddenly they're responsible for teaching fractions at 7:30 at night so the kid can do their homework assignment. It's absurd. I want to talk about kind of why that is. And there's two primary reasons why parents have to teach their kids academic concepts at night. The first one is actually the fact that kids are advanced ahead grade to grade before they have mastered prerequisite skills. So they actually don't have the foundational skills required to learn the lesson that's being taught that day, right? Because they've been pushed ahead regardless of skill mastery, because that's the tradition in schools. Kids are pushed along according to age, not according to skill mastery. So number one, most kids don't have prerequisite skill mastery, so it's very difficult to learn grade level content. Number two is that something called discovery-based or inquiry-based learning is dominant in the United States. And this is not an evidence-based practice. This is not a method that's supported by all the science that exists on how learning happens. This is an ideology. This is a belief system that the school system has had for over 100 years, that kids are responsible for their own learning and that all teachers have to do is create opportunities for kids to discover stuff. But that's absurd, because it took humankind centuries to discover everything we know about fractions. It took scientists, again, centuries to discover what we know about the natural world. So the notion that a kid, a third grader in a classroom, is going to discover fractions is absurd. Teachers need to be using something called direct instruction. And direct instruction is the most widely researched method of instruction. It is the most evidence-based. It involves short, clear, concise presentation of academic concepts to be learned, choral responding by the classroom. So the entire class responds, and then immediate feedback is provided on that response. And what that entails is it really reflects a fundamental, well-established principle of learning, which is that learning can't happen if active responding and reinforcement don't also happen. So we don't learn through osmosis by staring. As we develop core skills, we're able to actually learn via lecture. But that doesn't happen automatically and naturally, and it definitely doesn't happen for primary school kids. So what needs to happen is that they need to be provided the opportunity to actively respond to lessons. And that's not happening in a majority of classrooms. In fact, the very opposite is happening, where schools are actively resisting and putting out misinformation about direct instruction. And it's shocking. And so until parents revolt around the requirement of having to be their child's teacher at night because the kid's learning nothing during the day, nothing is going to change, because parents are actually picking up the slack, the result of the ineffective instruction during the school day. So schools don't have to change because parents are fixing it. And then the parents that don't fix it, well, those kids get labeled with all kinds of learning problems and put in special ed, and that's how the school district absolves themselves of those kids. So until parents demand evidence-based instruction, until parents demand, no, I'm actually not doing your job for you. If my child's not learning fractions in your classroom, then you need to figure out how to get my child to learn fractions in your classroom. And by the way, there's a lot of evidence on this. There's YouTube videos all over the place on doing direct instruction. It's still not being used, and it's not going to be used until a grassroots movement happens of parents and educators who know this and want to do it, but they're barred from doing it in their schools, which happens all the time. Until that happens, nothing's going to change, because the ideological dogmatism in school is real. I mean, they fanatically adhere to the belief about all kids have to do is discover stuff. That's how learning happens, but that's completely debunked. Discovery doesn't happen without mastery of fundamental skills. Think about a scientist in a laboratory. The only reason that scientist is able to discover anything new is because that scientist is unbelievably proficient in the foundations of that science, all the discoveries that have been made before. So if we want our kids to make new discoveries, well, they better master the stuff that we already know. Kids aren't supposed to be discovering new stuff in elementary school. They're supposed to be learning and mastering important, clearly established concepts that will then lead for them making potentially new discoveries later in life when they reach graduate school or they're in their careers, but not as third graders. So revolt. If you're required to teach your kids fractions at night, send a note to your teacher. My kid didn't learn this, so you need to figure out another way to teach this. And I recommend checking out direct instruction if that's not what you're using. Be brave, because you're your child's greatest advocate, and this is never going to change until parents demand that it does.